now tuned in to the Cold Hard Truth, Cayman's #1 hard-hitting live podcast show, where we feature some straightforward conversations on political, social, and celebrity news and all things happening in the Cayman Islands and around the world. This show was created to give the people a voice and a means of being involved and informed without any filters. Sometimes it gets crazy, but we always keep it real. We bring you the tea, piping hot, so grab your favorite beverage and join the conversation via WhatsApp at 324-1612. Email tips at CaymanMarlRoad.com. Now, here's your host, Sandy Hill, broadcasting live from the beautiful Cayman Islands.
Good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday. It is October. It is March the 10th. We've got lots to cover today. We actually have some experts who are going to be joining the show. And people are still trying to register, by the way, for the hazard management emergency notification tool. Now, I'm aware that, oh gosh, my apologies. I'm aware that some of you are still getting error messages. I just want to remind you that the best thing to do is to give them a call. Remember, they gave us their contact details yesterday, or send them an email in order to get them to assist you. So there could very well be some quirks in the system. These things happen for sure. So I'm going to stick that information back up on the screen for those of you who are still struggling to get registered. So Hazmath Emergency App, tech support 244-3160, or you email them at nens@gov.ky, and they'll get you all sorted out. So we've got some special guests that are going to be joining the program about 7:45 this morning. So we are just waiting on Blake and Aaron. And then we'll have probably just a little bit of time to kill before our special guests come on. And we're educating ourselves this morning. So I know a lot of us are seeking to understand the conflict in Ukraine. So we have a doctor who is, that's her area of expertise. So she's going to be talking about that. We have another doctor. These are not medical doctors. They're professionals in their own fields. And we're going to tell you guys all about them here in a second. But he's going to share with us some of his expert and knowledge when it comes to supply chain issues, as well as he's also going to talk to us about the gas prices and what we can expect to see happening. As you guys know, crude oil is at a relatively 13-year high. So this is incredible news. I had to go fill up my vehicle yesterday. I didn't realize how much I was on E, actually. But I had that reserve light come on, and it was like, go fill up. And sure enough, it was like $74. And it's not a huge car, really. But good morning, Blake and Aaron.
Good morning, Sandy Hill.
How are you?
We're good. So who are these folks you're having on today?
We've got some hard-hitting experts. So we have Dr. Golfo Alexopoulos, I think is how that's pronounced, professor and director of USF Institute on Russia.
All
I
right.
know. We're going to talk about Russia and Ukraine and try to make sense of that. And then we also have Dr. Setkin Ozkul, who's assistant professor of instruction, director of Supply Chain Innovation Lab, and he's going to be talking to us about gas price spikes and supply chain issues.
All righty.
We're bringing on, this is Experts Corner this morning. We're bringing the experts on to talk about a few things.
Sounds good.
Cool.
Hey, don't forget, today we have, and you can tell your viewers as well, we have that tsunami exercise.
Yes. I'm going to be telling people about that once you go live.
Doesn't really affect you online per se, but we have the radio station interrupt system that they'll be using at 9 o'clock to let people know this is only a test. So we'll see if it works correctly.
That'll be great.
Yeah.
People are still trying to get registered. We had them on the show yesterday.
Yes. And how did that go?
Yeah, I think they had a bunch of people getting registered. And as a result of that, yeah, lots of people
Did
trying
you
to get
download
registered.
Did you download the app?
Yes, I did it live on air.
And where do you go again?
They actually sent me a special little notification.
Where do you go to get that?
Where do we go?
Yeah.
NENS.
Yeah, NENS.
Gov. Yes. .ky.
Oh, .ky.
Yeah, so make sure you do it from the website first. That was kind of one of the things.
Oh, really?
If you try to just go and download the app.
Lens.
Stand by.
It's an error message.
NENS.
Mm-hmm.
Big news. I have some important news for you. Interesting news.
It's Blake and Aaron's Spilling the Tea with Sandy.
K-Man's top news headlines of the day from CMR.
Good morning, Sandy.
Good morning, Blake and Aaron. Good morning, everyone in Radioland.
Yeah. How are your viewers today?
They're doing fantastic, I believe. Everybody
Good.
looks good. Yes.
It's a nice day outside. So what's going on?
So we've got quite a bit going on, actually. Some not so good news, but let's start with the weekly epidemiological report that came out last night. Of interest in that report, apparently there have been 2 COVID-related deaths added to the list. They essentially explain that sometimes it's a matter of, watching for autopsy results and maybe some people who may have died at home. And so they've adjusted it now to 21 COVID-related deaths for the Cayman Islands. So we had one person that actually died in the last epidemiological week, and now it's up to 21. Now, CMR has gotten exclusive news this morning. Their prisoner has passed away, who also had COVID. You guys might remember this. I'm assuming he's going to be number 22. It just happened this morning.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
And remember about a month or so ago, it was a public holiday. I can't remember which one, but we had some prisoners calling us here on CMR. And he was the person that day that had been taken to the hospital. And, the prisoners were complaining that they were not getting adequate care. And the prison has officially said that's not true. So that young man now has passed away.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah.
Very sad.
So he was having kidney, I think he was in dialysis most of his life as well. So he did have an underlying issue.
Well, and that's one of them that they say COVID affects too.
Yes. So just a reminder to all listeners, there is the tsunami test this morning that's going to be undertaken by, I guess it's hazmat, but the emergency services. So we do have this new emergency notification app, and this drill is scheduled for early this morning around, I think, 10 o'clock-ish. So please don't panic never panic if you hear the alert. But they are going to do an exercise in the Carib Wave Tsunami exercise is what it's being called.
I'm downloading the app right now.
Okay.
By the way, the app is called. It's not a great name of the app. Maybe
Can you find it in the App Store?
Maybe it's named this for some reason, but it's called BlackBerry at Hawk. That is the name of the app.
Is that in the App Store?
Yes.
Or the Play Store? BlackBerry what?
There you go.
At Hawk, yeah.
BlackBerry at Hawk. So I was confused. Like, wait, they discontinued Blackberries. So don't get confused. It's not for
That
your
one, at the top.
It's not. Yeah.
Okay.
It's called BlackBerry at Hawk. Anyway.
So
the developer.
The way to properly download and use the app is to go to the website first and do the initial registration on the website and then go to the app, because some people are going to the app first and trying to download it. So we did have the hazmat team on the show yesterday, and we learned that was a very good tip to actually go to the website first.
Yeah, you go in and you opt in, as they call it, opt in.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in other breaking news, a woman was found unresponsive at her home in Admiral Landing last night after 6 p.m.
Oh,
I heard that. It's kind of a sad story.
Yeah, the police issued something on that as well. Remember the gentleman who had the pig transplant? We covered this story.
Yeah, we
He's
talked about
actually
that this
passed
morning.
away.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
bummer.
know, but what an amazing thing. Again, we talked about this
Yeah.
morning, but for science, it's super amazing. This is how things,
Yeah.
start to change. Unfortunately, I hope that I can someday provide help for the scientific community so that like
Mhm.
my children and their children can continue to live longer. I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, it was a big moment in science because
Yeah.
it's,
They
they're,
should examine your brain.
I think they
what they-
think
That's what they
they
should.
already have.
Yeah, that's what they
They
should do.
said too complicated and moved on.
yeah, they're looking
They
at
said
it.
they said no, too much.
Yeah. We
Yeah,
don't have
they've
enough
said that this
scientists.
this
They're like,
opens.
we'll circle back to you.
We don't. We don't have enough scientists on staff.
Yeah.
Actually, to
We're busy
Lord.
with the vaccines.
They said that this type of surgery opens the possibility of ending organ shortages, which exist all over the world. So they'll continue to push the envelope when it comes to medical science, and I'm sure in an innovative way, it will eventually work. But yeah, 2 months after he had the transplant, and they're not sure the cause of death yet. They're gonna have to do a full autopsy and come to conclusions about that. But Jubilee trees are being planted at the government admin building. So earlier this week, actually on Friday, the governor and the premier joined the Ministry of Sustainability and Climate Resiliency to plant 2 trees at the government admin building in honor of Her Majesty the Queen's Jubilee celebrations this year. So one was a silver thatch, which was donated by Gary Chisholm, and a mahogany, which was facilitated by Caribbean Blooms.
Rich mahogany.
rich mahogany and leather-bound books.
My apartment smells
Yes.
of.
Mhm.
So the silver thatch is going to be planted next to another plant that was put down in 2012 in commemoration for the Queen's Diamond Jubilee. So,
Yeah.
and then the mahogany can be seen close to the main vehicular entrance. So really nice to see some plants go up, some additional plants go up at the government admin building.
That's
Yeah,
nice.
for sure.
Yeah. So those are your news headlines for today.
Love it.
Thank you, Sandy.
Wonderful. And we
I'm
got some
getting-
special guests on the program. So
Who are you? I'm getting the
people
app right
can
now.
pull
so I'm very
themselves
excited.
away from your music to tune in for a bit. We've got some experts from USF who are going to be talking about the Russia-Ukraine situation, as
Okay.
well as supply chain issues and gas prices. So I had to go fill up yesterday for the first time in a little bit. And woo,
What was the gas price? I haven't looked lately.
sticker shock a little bit.
Depends on where you go. There's still some
What did you pay?
cheaper places.
It was $5 and something a gallon.
Yeah.
So to fill up my vehicle, which I don't have a big vehicle, it was $74.
Yeah, I'm around the $75
Mm.
range to fill
Yeah.
up right now, which seems like it's always been around that.
Yeah. So
your take.
price was for pure 93, it was $5.54, and pure 89 was $5.34.
Well,
Okay.
again, it's going to hit the wallet a little bit harder to put sanctions on a country that's doing atrocities in another. So,
Mhm.
unfortunately, we've all got
Well
to
said,
understand
Aaron.
that.
Well said.
Yeah.
All right, Sandy.
All right,
we'll get
guys,
to
have a
the
beautiful
French
day.
show. Yep, you too.
Bye.
All righty. Bye-bye. All right, folks. So yes, it is what it is. Some sad news this morning. Again, we have oh my God. Lots of traffic this morning, by the way. I'm already getting a few notifications about this, about people actually making their own lanes coming out of Marina Drive. Wow. I guess the NRA is going to have to fix that problem too, y'all. So yes. So somebody else has sent a photo, said Rex Creighton Boulevard, westbound towards Tomlinson Roundabout at Lantern Point. The traffic looks horrendous. Oh my goodness. All right, let me send out notifications, make sure everybody's up and awake and at it. We've got some special guests coming on this morning. We want to make sure that we give them a nice warm CMR welcome. So big shout out to Kevin Watler. He's got access to a lot of resources and he's been so incredibly useful. and sharing these resources with us. So yes, we've got some experts who will be discussing world events. And as I always say, we might be an island, but we certainly are not an island that time has forgotten anymore. And we're also not an island that can live in isolation, because the rest of the world, things that happen in the rest of the world impact us. So good morning, Virtuous. Please do not forget that you can call into the program. We do have a regular line now set up, 936-2626. And also you can use the regular link, or the sort of web-based link, I suppose, to call in as well, caymanmallroad.com/talk show. We do have a complainant who's going to be calling us later on about immigration. Wow. They got some complaints. They're also saying that immigration is putting a monkey wrench in their business plans and their ability to get back to business. So we're going to hear some of those complaints this morning. I believe the caller said that he would be calling in. He was really pissed off when he called me last night. I was like, ooh-wee, what a hot mess. So, yeah. So we'll let you know. He'll be coming in after he'll be coming in after our guests, after our in-studio guests. So Virtuous says, have a blessed day. Thank you, Jesus, for all the trials and the tribulations. Yeah, those tribulations make you stronger, my dear. Morning, Marshall. Morning, Irvlin. Omira says, good morning, Sandy and K-Man. Sipping my tea, piping hot. It's a beautiful day in the Cayman Islands, and so it is. I'm looking outside right now going, oh, it is gorgeous. This week has been really nice, actually. Diamond Princess is here. Good morning, Miss Joy. Siobhan, Olivia, Wee, Catalina says, don't forget that once you download the app, the app will also sound the alert as part of the test this morning. Yes. Thank you so much for that reminder, Keisha. Good morning. We've got a spammer in here. We'll go ahead and block that person. But good morning to you too, spammer. Good morning, Louie. So good to see you. Winter Wonderland, how cold is it in Detroit this morning? Jonathan is here, and he says sometime next month, gas is going to jump to $6.50 to $7. Just wait and see. I think that would probably be a record high, but hopefully our experts this morning can shed some light on that and have some predictions, tell us what they think. Good morning, Felicia. Good morning again. Louis says, pure Cayman, love the vibes. CMR mug is serving me well. Nice. Morning to Jessica. So good to see you. She says, good morning, everyone. God bless. So yes, we got some special guests that are joining us in the studio. Ooh, 27 degrees Fahrenheit in Detroit. Whoa, it's a little bit chilly. So I do have, by the way, remember yesterday I was telling you guys that we can now do a little bit of like we can connect our phones to the computer and then share that screen. So I'm excited to say that I think I've got one phone sorted out. So Marlon was working on this for me last night. So basically let me just see if I'm going to do a test run of it and see if I can get it. If I can get it on my own. Let me see now. Because it's one thing for somebody to show you how to do something, and it's a whole other situation for you to do it yourself. So connect with code. So I think I scanned that barcode. Yes. And then I click on done. And then how do I bring up the screen? Uh-oh. I do believe I might have forgotten a step. So I connect. Okay, we'll figure that out later. We'll take a minute to figure that out later. So I'm trying to remember. After I link with the code, then what? All right, we do have our first guest who is already here, nice and early. So let's go ahead and focus on that. We'll play around with this. We'll play around with these settings a bit later on, so that we can start the conversation, because this is going to be, I think, a very educational morning for us. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll hold all the other comments, folks, until a little bit later on in the program. So I think both guests have actually entered. So first up is going to be Dr. We're gonna have a little bit of a overlay, but I'm aware that Dr. Golfo, and you've got to forgive me if I'm mispronouncing your name, but we'll get it right here in a second. Alexopoulos, professor and director of USF Institute on Russia, is going to be joining us first and foremost. So she has lots of experience looking at the Soviet Union and, of course, Russian authoritarianism. And she says, especially in the disinformation space. So this is amazing. Okay, I think we have both. Oh, that was Kevin that popped in. Oh, my apologies. I thought that was our other guest. My apologies. All right, Kevin. Kevin's in the background there. Right. So Dr. Sekin Uzkul, we'll get the correct pronunciation here in a second, is an assistant professor of instruction and supply chain management in the School of Marketing and Innovation, and is the founding director of the Supply Chain Innovation Lab. So this is really, really interesting, because we have been having a lot of supply chain issues, and as a small island, we certainly understand how those issues impact our day-to-day life. So he has both industry and academic supply chain management expertise, and of course, along with the research projects that he's actually done as well. So he's an affiliated member of the USF Center for Urban Transportation Research, and he's also going to talk to us a bit about the gas pricing and the gas increases that we're all experiencing at the moment. So logistics systems and analysis, supply chain issue, those are some of the courses that he teaches at my alma mater, the University of South Florida. So Dr. Sekin Uzkul, am I even close with that last name?
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Dr. Sekin Uzkul. Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for joining us. So let's just jump right in and have a discussion. You know, we live on a very small island, and we experience supply chain issues on occasion. But I think since 2020, since the COVID pandemic, we have seen supply chain issues like we've never remembered in recent times. So give us an explanation or an understanding of exactly what is happening. And are we unique in the Cayman Islands, or is this something that everyone around the world is experiencing at this time?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure being here, and thank you for the invite. So island nations and islands are unique in their own sense that, you know, the amount of ports of call that those ships are going to be doing, bringing the goods to the islands, are normally scheduled way ahead of time. With the pandemic, unfortunately, we've been seeing a lot of schedule issues, and if a ship really misses a port of call, the next time that it's actually scheduled to arrive may be a couple of days later. So they may fully skip a whole port of call, and the ship may revisit again in 2 or 3 days in its next scheduled time. So that that adds additional challenges to our already tough schedule of supply chain shipments that's being arriving at the islands, right? For the Cayman Islands, I believe that it is no different, right? I'm looking at different things. I'm recently looking at the gas prices, the gas supply with the Russia and Ukraine conflict, and I'm seeing that I'm looking at Cayman Islands. I'm also looking at Hawaii. It's about very similar, right? Hawaii also gets its shipments from the United States, and I know Cayman Islands also gets its shipments from the United States. And I believe gas prices are around $5, possibly a little over $5 a gallon, and that is expected, right? Because the supply is being stringent right now, and we are feeling that unfortunately that price hike at the pump currently.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So $130 a barrel for crude oil was what I read, I think yesterday or the day before.
Correct.
That was a 13-year record. What are your predictions in terms of how high we can see this go?
So as far as forecasting is concerned, which is something that we do at the USF Supply Chain Innovation Lab, we are looking at multiple different things. We're looking first, how healthy is our supply, because that's going to really impact the price at the pump. And we have a good supply. The United States imports for oil from Russia is about 8% of the overall imports. So it's really not a huge component of our oil purchase, oil imports coming into the United States. Therefore, from the United States to the Cayman Islands. So I'm not necessarily concerned about that so much, because I believe that the President Biden and his team has a plan. They have also been looking to release additional oil from the natural reserves, and they have already done that. This is their second time actually they're doing that, one before the Russia crisis and now one after. So I know that they are trying to alleviate the impacts of this. But of course, we are seeing some decrease in our oil reserves, because those imports from Russia, 8%, will still not be there, especially after these embargo, if you will, of what the president did. We are not going to purchase oil and gas products anymore from Russia. So what I foresee is at least until the second half of this year and possibly into the fourth quarter, we will see the prices that we are seeing probably. Again, right now I'm in Florida. We are seeing approximately $4.35 a gallon. And, you are in Cayman Islands, probably seeing around $5 a gallon. I expect those possibly for Cayman Islands to go to $5.50. It will raise some more. But as we figure out, okay, now we are not dependent on that 8%, I believe that price is going to come down. And I think the president and his team may also release additional barrels of oil from the natural reserves, which will hopefully help bring that cost at the pump.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's kind of interesting, but here in the Cayman Islands, we always feel like we feel the pinch of oil prices a little bit extra more than the US, because it goes up slightly in the US. It seems to go up here quite exponentially. Fuel charges, because we also pay duty on top of our fuel that's provided. So it seems to impact everything from our electricity costs to obviously the prices at the gas pump. We do have Dr. Golfo. You'll have to again help me with this name, Alexopoulos, joining us as well. Good morning.
Good morning. Nice to see you.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
Did we get the name remotely close?
Well, it's Alexopoulos. So that was a very good job. Alexopoulos.
Okay. Yes, where you put the emphasis on which sort of area of the name is very important. So thank you so much for joining us. And Dr. Golfo, if I may just call you that,
Please.
Is an expert on Russian affairs. She actually is the professor and director of USF Institute on Russia, which, by the way, USF is such an amazing school. I'm an alumni of USF, but I graduated in 96, I believe. So much has changed. I didn't even know that we had an institute on Russia. The university is an amazing university with lots of expertise and knowledge. But Dr. Golfo studies contemporary Russian politics and society, including modern Europe and, of course, the Soviet Union. So we are very, very interested to speak to you as well this morning to add a certain, amount of understanding to what is actually happening in Russia and Ukraine at this time. So is there a simple explanation as to why Russia decided to invade Ukraine? Is there such a thing as a simple explanation for these things?
There actually is, interestingly. I think this is very complex. It's been building up for a long time. But the simple explanation is that Vladimir Putin, because this was really one man's decision, has this imperialist vision. He has accepted this extreme nationalist imperialist vision that there are historic Russian lands that were deprived of Russia when the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. And those lands should be brought back to their rightful place within Russia. So it's really imperialism. I mean, if there's a word, it's imperialism. There's a lot of discussion about, NATO and Russia's security and so on. I think that those kind of muddy the waters a little bit. There's a lot of Russian propaganda out there, a lot of Kremlin propaganda about what prompted this war, that the Ukrainian leadership are Nazis and they have to denazify and then they have to demilitarize and so on. If you look at what they're doing, if you look at the fact that there's no end in sight, that they're not willing to negotiate, that even Lavrov, Russian foreign minister, said today that they haven't invaded Ukraine. So I think the explanation for it is that when the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, we thought that was it. And actually it's been collapsing. And that moment was not over. What was decided at that moment didn't end. And so this is why we're seeing what we're seeing today.
Wow. That's very, very interesting. So, I mean, I thought imperialism was over. But I guess not.
Yeah, it's people have said that Putin lives in the past. He lives in the 19th century. He often talks about Russia's sphere of influence and that the United States should recognize Russia's sphere of influence in the former Soviet states. And this was something that came up in discussions even prior to the actual invasion. But they really think, those in the Kremlin really think that they have a sphere of influence. We should stay out of their sphere of influence. And that countries like Kazakhstan, Ukraine, the Baltic states, Moldova, they are really part of Russia's sphere of influence.
And of course, there is a possibility that this could spill over and extend beyond Ukraine, because I think Moldova in particular are very, very concerned that they may be next if Russia is successful.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's absolutely true. In fact, I think when this started, the week that it started, President Biden was asked in a press conference, do you think he'll stop at Ukraine? And he said no. So clearly the president has intelligence that suggests that he'll move into Moldova or who knows.
Unbelievable. So when we think about the former Soviet Union, it included a number of countries. Can we just do a little bit of a refresher on who some of those, territories included?
Yes. So if I could back up even a little further.
Yes.
When World War I occurred, and that was the war that ended empires, the Ottoman Empire collapsed, the Austro-Hungarian Empire collapsed. And in Russia, there was a revolution. So the Bolsheviks seized power. There was a communist revolution in 1917. But after that, there was this civil war. And during the Civil War of 1918 to 1922, roughly, there were a number of territories within the old Russian Empire that sought independence. And one of them was Ukraine. This idea that Ukraine is really part of Russia, has always been part of Russia, is simply not true. Ukraine was actually part of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth for a long time. In the Middle Ages, and it became part of the Russian Empire in the 19th century. And so, during this period of civil war, during the World War I, Ukraine tried to achieve independence again. It tried to become an independent state, but it was absorbed into the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was constituted in 1922, and it became a union of, by 1991, 15 states, 15 republics, Soviet socialist republics. And those included the main one, which was Russia, and then others on the periphery. The others were on the periphery. The Baltic states, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, which were absorbed during World War II. Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia became independent states at the end of World War I. So they had this moment of independence in the interwar period between the world wars, and then they were absorbed into the Soviet Union. Then Ukraine, Moldova, Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, and so there were former Soviet states in the Caucasus, in Central Asia, and in Europe.
Now, we do know that Dr. Seking does have to leave a little bit early this morning. He's got another engagement. So if I could just bring him in for just a couple quick and sort of final remarks. I know we haven't had much time with you. We may have to have you back on the program, I suspect, to kind of dig a little bit deeper into the supply chain issues and the gas issues. So if you missed it, he's already made a prediction about how high we may go. One of the interesting things is that the United States, as well as Europe, the European Union, the UK, they're trying to make some strides in finding alternative options to using Russian oil. We know that this week the Americans went and already started speaking to Venezuela, for example. How successful do you think, do you predict those efforts will be on finding new or alternative sources for oil going into Europe and the United States?
Sure. Thank you, Sandy. We need to find an alternative because, with the embargo on Russian oil and gas, we are losing basically 8% of our oil and gas imports into the United States. So that's what the president and his team are trying to do. They are reaching out to some other oil resources, and we may try to see if we can increase with some of our current suppliers of oil, right? And I know that the president and his team are also trying to reach out to some of those countries, try to see how can we make up this quote unquote deficit, if you will, of that 8% of the imports. How successful will they be? Time will tell, because these are, some of these suppliers are good friends of the United States, and some of these suppliers, they know that they can possibly create a friendship or create a relationship with the United States, such as Venezuela possibly. So time will tell how successful some of these will be, but I believe that they will push some of our current suppliers also try to increase possibly their supplies so we can make up this deficit.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. Unfortunately, we know that you do have to leave. Thank you. We want to thank you very much for joining the program. And I think what we'll do is we'll book another, because the supply chain issues, that could be an entire conversation all by itself. I know one of the things that we're having a really hard time getting here, I've been told by some local businesses, are packaging materials, and then container costs have gone up exponentially. It used to be like $3,000-$4,000 to get a container from China. Now it's like 15,000 plus. So I want to talk some more in depth about some of those logistical issues and what that means and how long we'll continue to see those increases. But Doc, thank you for joining us. And I'll leave it to Kevin to perhaps arrange maybe even a day next week, if you're available, to have you come back on the program to continue the discussion.
Thank you, Sandy. And to your point, there's a lot of issues with ocean carrier capacity. Everything you mentioned is directly related to that. And then again, the ports of call issues that I had previously mentioned. But I appreciate you having me. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the program. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. And of course, folks, we know that ocean freight is extremely important to us because we're a country that has to import everything by ocean freight. So Dr. Golfo, thank you. We do have a question related to your area of expertise from Charles. Charles says, isn't the war because of the Western countries' continuous lies of not expanding NATO and made Russia dismantle the Warsaw Pact? So let's talk about NATO for just a second to make sure that the average person has an understanding of what NATO is. And how it came about, and why there is this. Obviously, the Russians are the ones who will certainly agree with Charles that the North Atlantic Treaty Organization has been sort of pushing more and more and encroaching on Europe, and so he feels fearful of that. Is this a reality that the Western countries, meaning probably the United States of America, is pushing NATO to expand into the rest of Europe, and somehow that is something that threatens stability in the region?
I'm glad you asked about NATO. So let's think about what happened at the end of the Soviet Union and into the 90s. So it's true that NATO has expanded. The narrative from the Kremlin is that NATO has expanded because the United States wants to move the alliance to Russia's borders. The fact is that the United States did not want to expand NATO, but the Eastern European countries who gained independence from the Red Army in 1989, when the Warsaw Pact collapsed and communism collapsed in Eastern Europe, those countries having experienced Soviet domination, Soviet-style repression, they were afraid of falling victim to another kind of Russian advance. They had experienced it before, and so the Bulgarians, the Poles, the Czechs wanted to enter NATO. So I think that the phrase is always the US expanded NATO. The historically accurate phrase would be countries in Eastern Europe wanted to join NATO. Now, what happens when the countries of Eastern Europe want to join NATO? And this is an alliance that says in its charter, anybody is free to apply for membership and join and so on. So it really, could the United States have said no? I mean, I think one could argue that NATO became weaker by expanding, by absorbing all of these new countries into the alliance. One could argue that it's actually a weaker alliance than it was in, say, 1997. But I think that what often gets lost in the discussion about NATO expansion is that those who wanted the NATO security umbrella were the countries of Eastern Europe who had been dominated by the Soviet Union and had experienced Soviet repression. So you can bet that right now the Baltic states, and they've said it over and over again, thank goodness we're in NATO, because Putin would have just rolled into the Baltic states. Does NATO pose a threat to Russia? No, I personally do not think so, because Russia is a nuclear power. I think there are very few countries, the idea that NATO would invade Russia is something that the Kremlin says, but I don't see the feasibility of that. Now, the complaint that NATO is not the defensive alliance that it pretends to be, I think that there's some legitimacy to that argument, because NATO has engaged in certain offensive actions. But I do think that it's important to kind of see the NATO expansion from the East Europeans' point of view, from those who are right at Russia's doorstep and sadly have a historical experience of invasion. They now, as members of NATO, feel secure. And so I think it's important to look at it that way from their point of view.
Right. So NATO is an organization. It's a can we call it a conglomerate of all of these different countries? How many countries are currently a part of NATO? I'm just trying to see if I
think there are
find that.
30. I think there are 30. And it's a lot, actually, because
Yeah.
you need total unanimity in order to bring somebody into the alliance and so on. So it's really, so one could argue that it's not exactly, it's kind of lost some of its efficiency by expanding. But it absorbed many. So the other thing about the Russian complaint regarding NATO expansion is that many of the new countries that entered NATO don't even border Russia. You know, besides the Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia that border Russia, you know, Bulgaria doesn't border Russia. You know, so I mean, there are other countries that don't have a Russian border. Now that Russia's absorbing Ukraine, they will have a vast NATO border, but that's another story. One other aspect about the NATO argument that the gentleman raised, if the main Russian concern were NATO, let's just take them at their, let's just assume that really is what they're worried about. The proper response, or the response that would correlate with the NATO concern and the militarization concern, would be to bomb military sites, the way that the Israelis kind of, you know, bomb an Iranian nuclear facility, or bomb, you know, so it would be targeted, defensive, and that's it. But what we're seeing is not targeted and defensive. This invasion is about seizing territory. It's about absorbing a country. It's about terrorizing a population. Wow. So when you seek to terrorize a population and absorb a country, and you know, bomb civilians and so on, it's about something more than NATO. It's really about absorbing territory. It's about bringing Ukraine back into the fold. You'll remember too that on the eve of the invasion, the rhetoric out of Moscow was initially, we're going to liberate the Donbass. So a lot of Russians, you know, these polls about Russians supporting the war, you know, Russians think that they're only in the Donbass. The Russians think that their soldiers are just in eastern Ukraine. They have no idea that because Putin has put such control on media now. I mean, it's heartbreaking to see what's happening to free media in Russia now. So I would just say that I think that's very important.
Interesting. So again, for the benefit of some people who may have no clue what NATO is all about, it is definitely a military alliance, and you know, initially, I think in the early stages of its development, it did not actually intervene militarily in any sort of conflicts. But you know, there have been times, for example, the September 11th attacks, where NATO had to invoke Article 5, which essentially says, the NATO Charter says, and that was the first time I believe that it did it in the organization's history, that an attack on any member state will be considered an attack on all. Right. And so that was a response, again, to the September 11th attacks and the ongoing war in Afghanistan. So there has been this desire, according to some, and I know that obviously this has now been on the forefront of everyone's mind now that the attack has began on Ukraine, that the Ukrainian people, the Ukrainian president, would like to become a member state of NATO. Is this a smart idea? And I've just put up a map here to give people a visual of you know, who the member states are that comprise NATO. So again, it's only 30 countries in the entire world, and it's
right, and it's a transatlantic alliance. There's been some discussion of kind of bringing in Australia or trying to expand it, but no, I think the alliance is very committed to just its transatlantic limited space. But you're right that it was set up as a military alliance at the end of World War II to kind of bring North America and Europe together to counter what they perceived at that time was the Soviet threat coming from the Warsaw Pact. Actually, the Warsaw Pact emerged after NATO. And the two military alliances were part, they went head to head in a divided Europe during the Cold War.
We do have a commentator on WhatsApp who sent in the following. He says, since you're on the subject, he's sharing an article. He says, this is the best article that I've seen. There's a lot of misinformation on the subject, especially from the West. My opinion, that is being strongly provoked, that this is being strongly provoked by globalists to expand their agenda eastward and to re-strengthen the almost defunct NATO alliance. So is NATO almost defunct? I mean, it seems like if it's growing, I know you said growth is not necessarily in its best interest, so the growth might be weakening it. But if that's the case, further expansion would theoretically only further weaken it as well, right?
Right. And actually, I would say that Putin's, and it's not just me saying this, everybody says this, that Putin's actions have actually strengthened NATO. They've not weakened NATO because, for example, Sweden and Finland are not members of NATO. Their populations were never broadly supportive of joining NATO. Now that they've seen their neighbor, Russia, invade another country, public opinion has started to move in those countries. So Sweden, which would never in a million years have voted for NATO membership, now a majority of the Swedish population and a majority of the Finnish population support NATO membership, which would have been unheard of, even 3 years ago. So I think this idea that Putin is trying to destroy NATO. I mean, Putin has done NATO the biggest favor, strangely. He has brought NATO together. NATO now feels like it has this mission of upholding peace against a Russian aggressor. There are more countries now that want to join the alliance. So I don't see this. I mean, on the subject of the globalists wanting the war, this war is causing a severe economic downturn. The globalists benefit from economic strength, from a rising stock market, from expanding markets, and so on. So now, since this war began, we've seen shrinking markets, inflation. I think it's going to hurt us all economically. Certainly the Russian globalists, who are the oligarchs, they have not benefited because of sanctions and so on. So I would question that argument.
Mm-hmm. Now, yesterday, Kevin was kind enough to share with us a very comprehensive list of over 300 companies, private organizations, NPOs and companies that have all sanctioned Russia in some form or another. And of course, that list is growing by the day. Just this week, we saw like McDonald's jump on board. I think Coca-Cola, they were kind of late to get on board. But in your experience and from your knowledge base, have you ever seen, I mean, in my life, I can't think of a situation like this, but have you ever, can you ever recall having so many sanctions placed on a country or the government of a country because of a singular act? I mean, the response by way of sanctions has been tremendous and almost immediate. And I guess we're all hoping it's going to work. But do you recall ever seeing anything like this before?
I don't. And I wonder, I kind of see these sanctions as sort of the straw that broke the camel's back. I think that, it was like, for a long time, the West tolerated Putin's regime, tolerated a lot of things that he did. He would poison opponents using nuclear isotopes. He would poison opponents using chemical weapons, both in Russia and abroad and in the UK. He eliminated opponents. He would meddle in elections. He would support far right groups. He did all sorts of things. And in recent years, especially since 2014, 2016, people have been writing more and more books about this and doing more investigations about, Russia's influence operations on social media and the Kremlin's, meddling in the internal affairs of countries and so on. And I think that what happened with this war is that it just finally, it made people who used to say the worst things about Putin appear that they were right all along. And I think it just finally opened up the floodgates where there have been sanctions on Putin since and on the Kremlin since 2014. There have been different attempts to, rein in his kleptocracy and deal with money laundering and all sorts of shenanigans. But now that we see what he's about, now that this war is happening, I think everybody said, okay, enough. And I think, so I wouldn't look at it as, yes, it's a single war, but I think it was a single massive event in a series of events that finally made companies feel like, okay, we got to do something. And so they were shamed into doing something.
Right.
The only thing I would add, though, is I think one thing that is also getting lost in this story is how much Russians are suffering. When Visa pulls out of Russia, that makes it hard for an ordinary Russian to escape, to leave. Like, let's say you're an independent journalist and you're a target of the regime. They want to arrest you. They harass your family. And so on. If you leave the country and Visa shuts you off because you're a Russian citizen, how are you gonna survive? So I do think that we need to kind of think about what sanctions are affecting ordinary Russians. I mean, I was just reading this morning about how smartphones are not being sold. It's going to get hard. It's become harder for ordinary Russians to have access to a smartphone. That's huge. That's really important for them. So I do worry about that. I worry about how this is going to impact ordinary citizens.
And even last night, I was also reading, obviously their own government has blocked access to Facebook and what he sees as any dissenting information online. And Russians have been somewhat innovative in trying to find a way around that by using VPNs and other things that, his administration may not have thought about. I just want to show everyone just quickly, we are on day 15 of the invasion, and this is the progress that they have made. Now, Dr. Golfo, the progress has been slow. Apparently, Russia had some sort of an impression that they would be able to swoop in there, take over Ukraine, which I must say in terms of land mass, it looks like Ukraine is quite big, that they were going to just take it over and it was going to be easy, like taking candy from a baby, but it hasn't quite been as easy as they anticipated.
Yes, that is so true. And everybody's asking why. Everyone thought that what they were trying to do was really decapitate the government, install a puppet regime, and then somehow establish control over the country through their puppet regime. They weren't able to do that. All of the forces, the roughly 180, almost 200,000 troops that they had stationed along the border prior to the invasion, analysts believe are now currently in the country. Much of that has been, abandoned, destroyed. Thousands have been killed. Thousands of Russian soldiers have been killed. Many generals have been lost as well. So why? Why was it such a botched effort? I mean, people really wonder, is this the great modernized Russian military that everyone was so afraid of? And there are a few things that people have pointed out. One is that possibly there seems to be a lot of evidence of corruption at the high levels, that money that was put into modernizing the Russian military may not all have gone there. And some of that may have been siphoned off through corruption. The Russian government is notoriously corrupt. The other issue that they had in this war is just troop morale. They didn't tell their ordinary soldiers what they were doing. You know, many of these young men didn't even know that they were about to invade Ukraine. They were told that they were just engaging in military exercises. And so because they kept this secret and didn't tell ordinary soldiers what they were actually about to do, they weren't sufficiently prepared for the invasion. And so I think, you know, they've also had problems with supplies, problems feeding troops. Like there are videos on social media of Russian soldiers like going into the homes of Ukrainians and stealing their chickens from the yard because they're hungry. So it's really just it's just a mess. It's not a successful operation. So because of that, these initial setbacks, the Kremlin has really dug in its heels and tried more severe methods of bombing, of just aerial bombing to terrorize the population. Some fear that there might be a chemical attack. So I think the initial failures, rather than encouraging them to negotiate and cut their losses and get out, it seems to be resulting in them digging in their heels and insisting on being even more brutal.
Right. Now, we had just a few headlines this morning that are really, really interesting. So Reuters has a story up this morning that says Russian economy in shock from unprecedented, what they're calling economic war. And this is coming out of the Kremlin, headlines this morning. And essentially says that the Kremlin said on Thursday that Russia's economy was experiencing a shock and that measures are being taken to soften the impact as what it has described as an absolutely unprecedented economic war being waged against Moscow. So this goes back to my question in terms of, have we ever seen anything like this before? Jonathan mentioned Cuba. But even with Cuba, I mean, Cuba had a lot of support from Europe. European tourists have always gone into Cuba and supported Cuba, even when the Americans might have had their sanctions in place. So I don't think the situation in Cuba in terms of sanctions has been anything close to what is happening now with Russia. What's your opinion, Doc?
So if I could just say something about Cuba, because it is a very interesting case. And I think that historians of the revolution have examined how, once the United States cut off Cuba, once that happened, Cuba needed some economic support and it looked to the Soviet Union. So, Castro kind of shifted his regime, whereas he wasn't, all in with the Soviet Union until it became apparent that he needed that economic support to compensate for the massive losses. I hope I'm getting the history right, but this is my understanding. And that during the Soviet era, the Cuban economy benefited greatly from Russian subsidies that, of course, ended with the collapse of the Soviet Union. But back to the unprecedented nature of this, I agree. Even President Biden said when he imposed sanctions on the Russian central bank that sanctions on a central bank are enormous. So people are talking about the Russian government defaulting, that there might be a default which would have ripple effects throughout the global economy. It's really bad. I mean, just the ruble. The ruble has fallen so sharply. This is a financial crisis on the order of, the 1998, major financial crisis in Russia. That was such a shock. It's going to be incredibly harmful and painful for ordinary Russians.
Wow. Let's just see if we have any other comments or questions. Good morning to Barbara. So one of the really bizarre things for me is, how do you send your troops to war and not tell them that they're actually going to war? Because I had read that as well, and I thought, how does that work? Like, people, you just say, oh, this is just going to be a military exercise. And I mean, that's why I suppose a lot of them are giving up so easily, because they're like, we haven't bought into this.
Right,
You know?
right. That's exactly right. They haven't bought into that. They haven't. And in fact, I think as the news gets out, and I think it will be inevitable, that ordinary Russians are going to start to hear the truth about what's happening, that their country invaded like an entire other country and bombed civilians and so on. I don't see the Russian society agreeing to this at all. But how do you do it? You know, it's interesting because it actually has a history in Russia. When the Russians were fighting in it, when the Soviets were fighting in Afghanistan, they didn't tell soldiers that they were going to fight in Afghanistan. They didn't tell family members of the soldiers that their sons had been sent to war in Afghanistan. And so that kind of secrecy is very Soviet. You know, it really goes back to the Soviet era, when there was this lock on information and massive censorship, and the party controlled all media. Putin and those around him really grew up in the Soviet era. They are products of the Soviet era, and they think this way, that you can completely control the information flow. And I think he also wanted everyone to believe that he wasn't going to do it right up until the end. And so the Ukrainians certainly didn't think, I mean, I've heard Ukrainian citizens say they never imagined. I mean, Zelensky didn't even think that, the Ukrainian President Zelensky didn't even think that Putin would go through with it. But if you read Putin's speeches, and I do think that this is really important, if you look at what he says, he wrote a big treatise in July about how Ukraine is not really a country and it's really historic Russian lands. He told George W. Bush when George W. Bush was president, he said to him, George, Ukraine is not even really a country. It's really, it's just, this artificial entity that emerged at the end of the Soviet collapse. So he has delegitimized the Ukrainian people's right to exist, the Ukrainian state's right to exist for years. We just haven't been paying attention.
Right. And just as we start to wrap up, I know you also have a very busy day ahead. We just see this morning that the U.S. government now, the House of Representatives, has actually passed a bill to suspend energy imports from Russia. And that happened yesterday after President Biden signed an executive order enacting a similar ban. Now, it passed 414 votes to 17. 15 Republicans and 2 Democrats, ironically, voted against it. One was quoted as saying that Joe Biden must do more than swap out one dictator for another dictator's oil, of course, referring to Venezuela, which is where talks are ongoing. Does the U.S. have a part to play, you think, in, I mean, I guess it's difficult if you need oil and you've got certain people in the world that have it, you have to negotiate with them. But do you think by purchasing things like oil from certain countries such as Russia or Venezuela, that the U.S. sort of, whether it does so inadvertently or not, plays a much bigger role in supporting rogue governments and dictatorships?
I do. And I would add Saudi Arabia to that list too. I mean, there are lots of illiberal states, authoritarian states that are petrol states that survive on a single commodity. And I think, I think that the question you raise, we could even extend it beyond oil and natural gas to, doing business with China when it's engaged in genocide or when it, engages in human rights violations. We should really think about where our money goes, who we're supporting. I mean, thankfully, we do get most of our oil from our neighbors, Mexico and Canada. We also do have a lot of domestic production. But I hope that this sparks a broader conversation, because this conversation has started to emerge in this country about, where our money goes. It's not, a cheap item if it's produced in a sweatshop, a cheap, barrel of oil, if it's produced in a regime that murders opponents, we have to really think about where we put our money and our values and our priorities. And I hope that this prompts a real serious conversation.
All right. And just a final note before we allow our guests to leave. Of course, Russia has been condemned after bombing a children's hospital yesterday. And there's been ongoing concerns that, again, as the good doctor mentioned earlier, that this is a very unusual, military invasion in the sense that they are targeting civilian facilities. So there's a pattern of strikes on medical facilities, universities, daycare centers, children's hospitals, which seems to be quite unconscionable, really.
Yeah.
Do you think that
Yeah.
what will be his undoing? What will be Putin's undoing in this war, you think, ultimately?
I do think that ultimately the only way this is going to end is for him to be removed. I think he was the cause, and he is. So I don't see negotiating a settlement with Putin. I don't see that happening. But we've seen him do this in Syria, target civilians. I think we've seen him do this in Chechnya, target civilians. And it's all about subduing a population, terrorizing a population. Do I think this could end, and could it be his undoing? I certainly hope so. I do think it's possible. I think it's possible that there are segments of Russian society, perhaps the business class, the military, could undo Putin, could push him out, gang up against the security services. It's possible that the security services, which has been blamed for certain things, will feel like they have nothing to lose. So if he is choked off of if through these sanctions, these punishing sanctions, he cannot pay his military, pay his security services, and so on, then it'll be very hard for him to stay in power. Lukashenko was able to stay in power because the Russians gave him the money, the Kremlin gave him the money to pay his security services to terrorize the population and keep them in power and massively arrest people. But if you don't have the money to pay those people, they're not going to work for you anymore. So hopefully choking off that money supply will ultimately end the police state. But in the process, the suffering that's going to happen will be immense.
Right. Do you have time for just a few more comments and questions?
Sure.
Okay, thank you so much. So we do have Jonathan, who makes a point here. He says, but Russia controls something like 60% of Europe's heat. What happens when Putin decides to turn that off?
So I think, is it 60%? Because I thought it was more like 40%. But you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, Jonathan, that it's sizable. It's significant. So what happens? Well, what's interesting is that European countries now are saying we will deal with higher gas prices. So what happens when they've already decided that they're going to move away, and this is it's so important to appreciate just how devastating this will be for the Russian economy. The Russian economy really depends on oil and natural gas exports. And so cutting that off is going to be devastating. And what this invasion has done is that it has taught the Europeans that they can't be dependent on Russian oil and natural gas, which is something that that others have been saying for a very long time. And if Europe moves away from Russian oil and natural gas, in the long run, it will really hurt Russia in the long run. So I see them doing that. They're trying really hard to move. I think that Jonathan's right, that in the short term, it will be devastating. It will be very hard for Europeans to get through the winter without Russian oil and natural gas. But I think that they've made a decision that ending a war in Europe and on their doorstep is so important that it warrants this sacrifice.
Right. So just to clarify, Jonathan, for your benefit, the European Union, 90% of the gas used in the EU is imported in, but only 45% actually comes from Russia to EU member states as of 2021. So just an FYI, not quite 60%, but of course the doctor's position is it's going to hurt them in the short term, but in the long term, it's going to hurt the Russian economy and the Russian people much more. Because I suspect, and when I was going through that long list yesterday, this is one of the things that came to my mind, is a lot of these sanctions, it's not just companies pausing business in Russia, but some of them are completely withdrawing. I mean, one, I can't remember which corporation that was, but they said they're going to sell their interests. They're going to sell their businesses in Russia. And when you sell, you're probably not going to be going back anytime in the foreseeable future. So we have large conglomerate companies that employ 65,000 people or more that all of a sudden are saying that they are prepared to disappear because of Russia's atrocious track record. And those are going to be long-term implications for the people of Russia. Now, we do have some WhatsApp comments that have come in as well. So this individual says the argument of Russian oligarchs is humorous coming from the US. The US is the country with by far the most and richest total oligarchs in the world. They've taken over all major facets of our lives and control the narrative of the West. All major powers try to install puppet governments. US and England have done this more than anyone. All war is evil and there's no exception, but in my opinion, there's a lot of blame to spread around.
I do agree that all war is evil. Absolutely. I don't think the West is blameless, but I think that it's very important to blame Putin as the principal aggressor in this war. I think, it's when there is a conflict, you blame the person, the entity, the government that started the conflict. And I think, I think that the Kremlin likes to say, well, we invaded Ukraine. Well, first of all, they don't acknowledge that they invaded Ukraine, but they talk about how, well, the United States invaded Iraq. Well, yes, and I'm opposed. I was opposed to the U.S. invasion of Iraq, and I'm opposed to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So I don't think that you, by saying, well, the West does it and everybody does it, I don't think that means that Russia has a license to do it too, like that everybody should do it. I think that we should just say, we should condemn it when it happens on both sides. I agree. And I think that this was a problem during the Cold War, is that we didn't condemn human rights violations on both sides. One side would condemn the human rights violations perpetrated by the other side. I think we should be really clear about where the human rights violations are occurring and hold everyone to account, east, west, everywhere.
Right. And one final comment says, morning, very interesting conversation. I agree with a lot of the doctor's comments on Russia and Ukraine. I don't think that Putin will stop the war, even though it's not going well, as his ego, as it's an ego thing now for him. I think the only thing that would be if there's an internal domestic revolution in Russia and they topple Putin, too bad the world let him take Crimea in 2014 without much notice. So again, the point that he's been engaging in a lot of questionable and perhaps unlawful and illegal bad behavior for some time, and everyone was just turning a blind eye until this most recent aggression.
Yes, I do agree with that. I think a number of people have said, we could have stopped Putin 4 months ago. We could have stopped Putin 6 years ago. We could have stopped Putin, so I think, now what do we do? Now I do agree with the listener that only an internal elite defection or toppling of Putin will end this nightmare.
All right. Well, Dr. Golfo, thank you so much for joining us this morning. This has been a very enlightening conversation for sure. I know a lot of our listeners have enjoyed it. Marshall says very informative and knowledgeable conversation. I appreciate it. And I think that sentiment is shared by everyone who was tuned in. We get a very different perspective, I think, by speaking to professionals such as yourself who have studied Russia, studied the Soviet Union, and this is your life, I suppose. Making sure that you understand. So, any predictions for how this will all end? I mean, my prediction, of course, is kind of what that last commentator shared about a revolution of sorts. I think that the Russian people will ultimately have to be the ones who undo Putin, and whether that's called a revolution or an assassination or whatever it's going to be, it will be left to them really to make that decision.
It will be. And thank you so much for having me on your show. It was really, really just an honor to be on. And I've really enjoyed our conversation. I agree. I think that is the only way. And in fact, I'll end with the words of the Russian democracy activists who say that it is their role to change their government, and that they will do that. There's a big movement of artists and writers and activists and Russian who are proposing this, a new Russia. And so they're looking ahead. They want to build a new country. They want to move beyond this Soviet KGB past and build a real democracy, a real federalism, a real human rights abiding, law abiding state. So they can do it. They have a very educated and beautiful people. Russians are wonderful people and with a beautiful history. They've just been burdened with terrible governments over the years. So hopefully they can move in a democratic direction soon.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And as the saga develops, we may have you on again to add some additional insight into any new developments or anything that's happening. So do have a wonderful day.
It would be my pleasure. It would be my pleasure. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you. All right, folks. Some representatives there from USF. Go Bulls! As you guys know, that is my alma mater, and I am pleased to have graduated from the University of South Florida. In my opinion, the best public university in the entire state of Florida. Better than UF, better than FSU, but that's just me. I'm a USF alumni. Kevin, let's have you jump in on the conversation this morning. Kevin, thank you so much for organizing those wonderful guests for us. USF has such a plethora of, and of course you now work at the university, but they have such a plethora of available specialists. And, I think back to when I left in 1996, I'm sure they had a lot going on then, but as a student, I probably wasn't as aware. But, I actually worked for the Oracle, which was the school newspaper back then. And through that opportunity, that on-campus job, I did meet some really interesting, even guest lecturers. So I remember one guy that I was able to interview, he was visiting from the United Arab Emirates and talking about Middle Eastern relations. And at the time, that was a really hot button and hot topic. How does it feel to be in a university setting now, Kevin, with such immense resources and professionals and experts all around you?
I'm going to tell you, it's an amazing experience. I'm still trying to adjust and get used to it. We have just about 50,000 students at the university, and my job at the university, I coordinate majority of the media interviews with, again, the subject matter experts. So, when the Russian-Ukraine conflict started to pick up, again, we have a lot of media looking for stories and looking for experts to come on their shows. And so I would be the one to organize those interviews, just like I did for CMR. But it's really amazing that we have a university with so many different experts. Again, we have an experts guide that I maintain, and based on whatever topic someone might want an expert to come on, they'll contact me, and then I will find whichever professor is available to be able to speak on the topic each year. In fact, when I first started, remember I got this new job in December. But one of the things that my boss had assigned me to do was to update the experts guide. So, they'll send it out to all of the department heads for people who want to speak. 'Cause there are some professors that don't necessarily want to speak,
Right.
or just not comfortable speaking to media. So those who have an interest, they'll give me the information on the different topics that they are subject matter experts on, and then I put that in our database. And so I just search for certain keywords. If they want to have supply chain, an expert in supply chain, if they want to have an expert on smoke. We've had recent people asking because allergies has really picked up. The pollen is really, really bad here in Florida right now. We have a lot of oak trees, and the cars are covered with that nasty pollen. And so we have experts coming in, for who want to speak to allergists. And again, USF Health was one of the big things when COVID was happening. Remember, I brought on a number of experts on CMR as well, to make sure that we're bringing those folks who are in that field to explain things to the public. So it's really amazing. I'm so glad that I have this opportunity. It's opening so many more doors, and now that I'm part of the CMR team as well. I want to make sure that I'm able to use these tools and the experts that I have to again enhance the product that you're bringing to people, because we want our folks in Cayman to also be informed and have access.
Absolutely. Yeah, because we live in it's so funny because we often talk about the information superhighway, but I feel like sometimes we actually live in a world of misinformation superhighway. And being in media, sometimes we get it right, sometimes we get it wrong, but our ultimate goal is to try to get it right 100% of the time if that were possible. So I think that this level of discussion and expertise, definitely here in the morning program, adds just another layer, another element to the entire platform. We had someone mention earlier how much they're actually enjoying CMR's content. And they said the next thing you need to do is add some weather. They said, you do a great service for the island. I really enjoy your show and love the Daily Buzz. And you need to add weather. So I know weather and sports for us always kind of get left behind a little bit, but we need to see if we can focus, find someone to kind of focus on those as well, because it really is a team effort. Kayleen is here, and Kayleen says, go Bulls as well. Yes. So absolutely fantastic, Kevin. Thank you so much again. Now, Kevin is also working on, just as an FYI, and I think you can sort of give us a little bit of a preview on this, but Kevin has been working on a mental health series. So Kevin, tell us how that's going and when are we looking at launching that as well?
Yeah, so with a lot of stresses from COVID and a lot of things that even was before COVID, mental health was not something that was really talked a whole lot about in Cayman. I know even when I was a reporter back in my Cayman 27 days, I remember bringing on Dr. Lockhart, or we brought on Dr. Lockhart, and they were always talking about the mental health facility. But you got to realize that was like 10 plus years ago, and we're finally getting some things moving, but a whole lot of the discussion is not out there. It's like a taboo topic. If someone says they're in therapy, people somewhat judge them or have things to say, and we want to try to break down some of that stuff, because we all have a lot of stresses in our lives. Our young folks have a lot of stresses. Adults have a lot of stresses, and our elderly folks have a lot of different stresses. So we want to bring on different experts to share different topics. We're going to also bring on victims for certain tragic incidents to share some of the things that follow, like if you want to call it PTSD, kind of how they cope with some of the things they went through. And so and I'm going to have a combination of local and international experts to come on the show. So I've been working on trying to get some things lined up. I've reached out to, again, a lot of those who work in mental health in the local community. Again, I have a lot of access to those at USF, but I don't want it to be stuck with just who I have access to in the USF. I'm also looking for some experts from other areas as well. And then we're going to try to do a weekly show where we're going to, again, have different topics explored. We hope to have the first one next week. So I just want to make that date. It's not 100% confirmed yet, but we want to at least have it started next week. The time change will happen in the United States, so I have to keep that in mind over the weekend. But we want to make sure that we're bringing different mental health topics to the people of the Cayman Islands, so we could just better be able to cope with the different struggles we all have.
Mm-hmm. And thank you so much, Kevin, because of course, on the heel of that announcement, we do see that last night, unfortunately, there was another unresponsive person found, and it was a suicide. 46-year-old woman with two preteens. This has got to be the most difficult thing that they will ever endure in life, I think. But it's just, again, goes to the point when Kevin says that there are a lot of people struggling for different reasons. We don't always understand or know why. But you can believe that any mother or father who decides to, take their own life, it has to be that they saw really no other options available to them in that moment. And that's incredibly sad, because no parent wants to leave their children prematurely in this world. So it's just a really, really sad and unbelievable situation. So I think that, the series is going to be called Unmasking. And it really is trying to, we all walk around with a face every single day. We have to get things done. And, there are people who are like, I didn't see this coming. I didn't know this person had any issues, or they appeared to have a perfect life. And that mask, I think, has to come off. And a lot of us have to be honest. If we are struggling, the first step to getting help is obviously to admit that you are struggling. And then, from there, you can reach out to professionals. So Kevin's got a great lineup for us. So thank you so much, Kevin, for working in that series. We do have a lot of other things on tap for 2022 here on Cayman Mall Road that we're really, really excited about. But I think the mental health one was at the top of our list, and we've been talking about it for a minute now. So I'm glad to see that it's coming together.
Absolutely. Well,
all right,
I'm
Kevin.
to jump off. I got some morning work to continue doing.
Have a wonderful day. I see you in your bull shirt. Love it.
Thank you very much. Go Bulls.
All right. Have a good one. All right, folks. So if you have ever been to Tampa, you'll know that USF, that's where the main campus is, has a humongous presence. And the University of South Florida actually contributes to the Florida economy, and especially the Tampa economy, significantly into I think, I'll have to get the figures, but it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. So absolutely. I graduated. That was my first university degree. And, university life is a time when you're young. I started at, I think I just turned 17. Yes. I'm a little bit early because of when my birthday kind of falls. But you know what? It was just an amazing experience in terms of the things that you learn, and you're young and you're willing to soak in everything, and you meet new people and different people. And, I was already living in the US for at least 10 years by that point. So it wasn't like I had just left Cayman. It was probably that big of a jolt, but it was still, going from high school to university, living on your own, trying to figure things out. The interesting people that you meet. For me, university life, the most interesting thing about university life was really the people that I would have been exposed to, because in high school, you don't get quite that international flavor. You might have met one or two people that were from somewhere else, but in university, you have international students that come into the university environment, people from out of state, from all over the world, really. And to me, that was the most interesting component of my experience. And then just trying to, as a young adult, trying to get your bearings, trying to get your footing in life, and trying to figure out who you are, really. What do you really believe? Because you're no longer under the house of, your parents or your aunt or uncle or whatever. You're on your own. And so it was an immense opportunity to learn and to develop and to do things on your own, make a lot of mistakes, and try to recover as quickly as possible from those mistakes. I do see Jared here, and I do want to, we're going to switch gears a little bit after we speak to Jared. But we also do want to have a conversation about immigration, because we do have someone who wants to call in and talk about some immigration concerns. So, Jared, good morning. What is on your mind today?
Hello, my name is Sandy. How are you?
Good, good. How are you?
I'm pretty good.
So you're coming in a little bit. Your audio seems a little bit wonky.
Can you hear me now or no?
It's very low.
Is it better now or no?
No, it's kind of echoey and a bit low, so I'm not sure. Check your audio settings on your device on your computer
Okay, can you hear
and
me now?
see what's going on.
Or still low? If not, I can just come closer to the computer. I might just it won't hassle. Is it better now or still low? Okay, give me 1
Yeah,
minute.
it's not
Give me 1 minute.
okay. You want to, yeah. Maybe coming in and out again might help. So thank you guys so much. Let me just have a quick look here. Oh yes, I have I've just rediscovered. Hold on. I was just reminded how to actually do the whole phone mirroring thing. Oh yes, I totally forgot how to do this.
Is it better now?
No, you seem very echoey, but go ahead and make your comments. Maybe we can.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So I'm living in Canada. We are definitely feeling the pinch with the whole sanction situation. It's like.
Can you guys hear him okay, or is it just me? Let me try the. Hello?
Can you hear me? All right. Let me just come back out and come back in and see if that works.
Maybe exit out completely. So while Jared is, I'm actually gonna kick you out of the studio, Jared, and then I want you to come back in entirely. And then I'm trying to kick you out. Let me see. Yeah, try that. But let me show you guys something here that is so absolutely cool. Modern technology being what it is, we're always looking for ways to innovate here on CMR. You guys know I love technology anyway, right? I'm a believer in technology, and I believe in using it to make our lives better. By the way, Paul says in Bermuda, they're paying $8.56 per gallon for 87 octane, which is like the cheapest one. Now, Paul, is that US dollars, or do you guys have your own currency? I'm not sure about that, but look at this, folks. Look at this. Is this not cool? So now this is what I wanted to do yesterday, but of course, hadn't read the instructions, didn't have IT guru Marlon do it for me, because ultimately he ended up doing it for me. I was like, Marlon, I got this new thing and I need you to figure it out. Can you read the instructions and do it? And he was like, really? But yes, he did. And look at this, folks. This is the iPhone that this is actually the one that I have for the phone calls. There's Marlon showing up on my phone. What's he doing on my phone? So this is so anytime now we have like phone demos or whatever, what I'm going to do though is I'm going to clean this phone up a little bit, because this is going to be your studio phone. And to quickly get up and running, last week or the week before, when we got this number, he kind of just backed up and put everything on another phone for me. So I do need to wipe this phone, in fact. But I wanted to, before I could do that, CNB needs to fix their system, because this one has my CNB login on it. So I can't do it because CNB is having some OTP issue and whatever. So just to be able to check my little money, my few little coins in CNB, I've got to leave this one active like this for now. But once CNB gets themselves sorted out, then I'm going to actually wipe this phone, because this has a lot of unnecessary stuff. I mean, honestly, we can install so many apps that we don't even need. There's stuff on here for my daughter that she never uses, because I try not to really give her a mobile phone too much, because I don't want her getting used to it. Next thing you know, at 6 years old, she's like, oh, she needs a mobile phone, because we told her she can't get one until she's 16 anyway. So, I've talked to you guys about a couple apps. Like here's the one that I use for Santa. So I think for this one, I probably still have one good year left, like one more Christmas before she's probably going to stop believing, because she's starting to ask very intelligent questions now about where Santa is located and how all of this works. But this is the calling app, and this is so cool because you can set all sorts of different things. You can have Santa call not just at Christmas time, but other times of the year. So if she's not brushing her teeth and whatever, I can have Santa call her and encourage her to do that. But like I said, the time is growing very, very close now where Santa is not going to be an effective means of moderating her behavior in any way, shape, or form because she just isn't going to believe in Santa anymore. Oh my gosh, what a mess. So, yep, we've got YouTube app, whatever is on here, we can actually just do a screen share. So I'm so excited about that. She has this little toy, by the way, this little baby Yoda. She has him. That's why he's showing up on my thing. You guys are probably like wondering, like, why? You remember how we were talking about the whole Western Union thing? Well, I never did really use the Western Union app. I did it online. But anyway, the point being, folks, that now I can share the screen, the phone screen, with you. And yeah, that means a whole new world of possibilities has opened up. So Jonathan says his prediction is Russia will take Ukraine. Well, they're not having an easy time of it so far. So I don't know what's going to change. Tommy says, great conversation, Sandy, about the conflict with Russia and Ukraine. Thank you so much, Tommy. Jared, let's try it again.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, but it's still the same. I don't know what happened to your audio. Yeah. And unfortunately, because we can't hear you that well, do you want to try calling through WhatsApp on the other phone?
I'll try. I can try from my phone.
Yeah, call 936-2626 on WhatsApp, and we'll take it that way and see if that is a clearer connection. And then we got to talk to Paul about his immigration concerns. Let's see here. Senor Paul. Let me see what's going on with Paul. He was headed to immigration first thing this morning, and he is not happy. So let me see if Paul is ready. Good morning, Paul. Let's see if he's ready to jump in to the conversation. So Jared, we're going to kick the other one out. Let's try this one and see. Good morning. Uh-oh, not quite ready. He's still making some adjustments. Are you joining us from your phone now, from your mobile device? He's still getting that sorted out. So $8.56 a gallon. Oh my gosh. That's crazy. Wow. Jonathan thinks that if we buy from Venezuela, it'll be like 2 cents a gallon over there. I don't know if it's that cheap. Because, it's that cheap for them. But I think when they export, they're not going to be selling it to you for $2 a gallon. That's what they make it for their own people. But Venezuela is another whole hot mess. Trust me, because how can you be sitting on that much oil and making that much money and still your poor people are suffering as much as the Venezuelan people are? Here's my response to that. What a hot mess, folks. What a hot mess. All right, Jared, let's try it again.
Yes, Miss Sandy.
All right, there you go. Now you're crystal clear.
You're crystal clear. All right. Yeah. So in Canada, well, specifically British Columbia, we're paying like almost $2 a liter for gas. And so I guess the sanctions do work. It's just that everybody feels it as a global community. I find it a bit humorous. We're taking oil from Venezuela when 15 months ago we were upset with the dictator there. So we're just jumping around simply because I guess changing dependency on oil overnight can be hard. And I think our tendency as a world to be dependent on oil, gas, yeah, we didn't make that transition as we should have. And so while Russia is being sanctioned, we're gonna feel the pinch of it. And so there ain't really much you can do about it. But I know, based on the line of work that I do with students, there has been an uptick and increase in anxiety just generally across the board. And
you mean in the last 2 weeks because of this war?
But well, since COVID started.
Oh, since COVID, yeah.
Since COVID started, there's been a lot of depression and anxiety. I know when I was in Cayman, it was a bit unfortunate hearing the suicide of one person, which didn't go over well with me personally. because that person is in that age range. So I do, want to encourage young people, if you need support, if you need to talk to someone, do not bottle it in, because it's not easy, when you have COVID and you have a war and, trying to make ends meet. It can be a bit all too. So, yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, yeah. I mean, these are real concerns for sure. Thank you, Jared, for sharing those with us. And again, folks, a couple headlines we're going to go over this morning. So, Jared, that's it for you today.
That is it for me. That's the only
Good to see that Cayman flag in the background.
It going to stay there. I tell you that. But yeah, no. Thanks for having me, Sandy.
All right, my dear. Sounds good. I see your podcast mic in the background as well. That's what you need to be hooking up.
Oh, right. I still try and work out how the flow, the setup.
You'll get there. It takes a minute. It takes a minute, but you'll get there.
All right. Thanks.
All right, folks. Again, thank you, Jared. Now let us see if we can get a hold of Paul. So a bit of sad news this morning, folks. We do have a prisoner that has passed away. I guess he was still in prison custody, so he died this morning. His family reached out to me, and as you guys will remember, I'm trying to remember what date this was. I feel like this was early February. When was that last holiday? Not Ash Wednesday, but the one before that. We had prisoners contacting us, talking about how they were being treated during the COVID pandemic, and the fact that they were not particularly happy about it. And I tell you what, folks, the day that they called, they in part called, this was January the 24th, actually. They called because a particular prisoner was, I'm just going to pull this up 1 second here, was being transported to the hospital, and he's been in critical care pretty much all this time. So my understanding is the prisoner actually had underlying issues with his kidneys, so he was in dialysis most of his life. His family was pleading for his early release. I believe he was in there for drugs. I'm going to look him up here in a second and see what I can find out. But essentially, they were pleading for his early release because of COVID and because of the cramped conditions in the prison and so on, which, on the one hand, I understand why the prison system, the penal code, can't necessarily take the approach of letting everybody out just because, COVID is here and so on. But I don't know much about his particular situation and whether or not more could have been done. But he has passed away this morning, which is really, really sad news. Quite unbelievable news, actually, but his name is Oscar Watler, and I will try to find out how old Oscar was, but I don't believe that he was particularly old either. So I'll try to get some more details, really. Let me just see. So yes, we will get some additional details on Oscar, but I'm afraid to say that so he in 2018 he was sentenced to 12 and a half years. So now I could understand why they wouldn't have let him out, because 12 and a half years, this is only 2022, so he was pretty early on into his sentence. So yeah, there is that. I think his family member said he was at the tail end of his sentence, but that would be impossible because 2018, 19, 20, 21, 22, that's only 4 years into 12 and a half year sentence. So he's not at the tail end quite yet. So unfortunate. So he was young. Looks like he's 30, 30, maybe 6 now, not yet 40. Wow. Okay. So our condolences nonetheless to Oscar's family. Let us see if we can get Paul on the line this morning. Paul. Let's see here. Paul is a business owner, and Paul has some complaints. All right, let's see. Probably at immigration. He did say he was going to go into immigration earlier today. Oh my lord! This is an emergency system. That's definitely going to wake anybody who's sleeping. All right, so no answer from Paul. If we can't get him today, we'll see if he's available tomorrow. So that was our emergency notification system, folks. And this phone isn't the one that's connected to the thing, but basically it says Carib Wave 22 Tsunami Exercise National Emergency Notification System. This is only a test. Don't get scared, anybody. It's only a test. Following a magnitude 8.3 earthquake, Lord, let's hope we never see that occurred off northern Panama, exercise. The specific tsunami warning center has issued a tsunami alert for the Cayman Islands. This is an exercise only. They keep telling you it's an exercise only. Don't panic. The Pacific Warning Center was at... Yes, honey child, we hear you. It goes on to say that the Pacific Warning Center has advised that 1 to 3 foot tsunami waves are possible with the estimated arrival time of the first tsunami wave in the Sister Islands at 11:10 a.m. and in Grand Cayman. But wasn't this supposed to happen at 10 o'clock? Aren't they early? Oh yes, I have to hit acknowledge. Don't forget when you get it. Let me just show you guys. If you don't hit acknowledge at the bottom, it'll keep going off on you. All right, so I've acknowledged it and they've sent another one. So I need to acknowledge that one too. So for those of you who've not yet registered, folks. Oh, they said 9 o'clock? I thought it said 10 o'clock. All right. Well, okay. So I'm trying to show you guys what it looks like. If I can get it to focus. There we go. 1 of 2. And then you have to, where's the acknowledgement button on this one? But anyway, at some point you've got to acknowledge it. Someone's messaging me, my apologies. Okay. So we got a missing dog in Northside this morning. That's why poor Marcia. Marcia's dog, Max, is missing. It looks like a little poodle mix. Okay, so 9 a.m. Evelyn is laughing. That's very loud, though. Yes, child. Very loud. Like I said, if you're sleeping, that should wake you up. If you're not waking up after you hear that, something's wrong. Okay, all right. Well, there you have it. Jamelia says that she was frightened by it. Oh my gosh. Don't be afraid. So let's talk about this. So someone messaged me who has been active in the... Oh, Paul is calling. Hold on. Hold on now. Good morning, Paul.
Hey, how you doing? Sorry, I've just been really busy with all this stuff.
So you're live on air as we speak.
All right, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, not too bad. Just stressing because when government, which we hoped, reduced the 3 lateral flow tests, which means an increase in tourist numbers, it kind of caught a lot of the companies unaware with no staff. And It's the first time in almost 30 years of doing business in Cayman that I've actually had a permit deferred.
Mm-hmm.
And I only asked for a temporary permit for 3 months because I actually have to go back for personal reasons to Ireland. My mom's not doing too well, and a couple of
I'm
other
so
things.
sorry to hear that.
It's okay, but what's happened is the permit has been deferred for a guy that I used to have working for me that's retired in the US, and he just comes down here for 6 months every year just to get out of the cold. And he's worked for me since '95, on and off. And basically, I put in a 3-month temporary just to get him to cover my 2 months that I'm going to be gone. No training required, and it was deferred on the grounds of need to know what his job description is and how much money he's going to get paid, which is actually all on. So I don't know how I can actually define what a boat captain is, right? And a tour narrator. We do a eco tour where we go over to the mangroves in the central wetland forest. We actually explain to all our guests about the history, the culture of the island, and we explain to them all about the mangroves, what's in the water and stuff like that. You don't need a master's degree. You just need to be able to have a conversation with people for about 45 minutes. But that was all explained in the covering letter. And I'm just one of a number of business owners that I know that have had permits deferred for silly reasons.
So let me just clarify, Paul, what you're saying. So your permit has been deferred because they're saying they need a job description and what else?
The salary.
The salary. So you did not include the salary in your application. Isn't that a question on the application form?
We did.
You did include it.
Yeah. Basically asked for what he was going to receive, which is $450 CI a week plus tips. I'm not expecting tips to be massively huge because I know the borders are open and everybody's jumping up and down and going woohoo. But realistically, we only have about 10% of our normal airlift. So we're only getting about 10% of the tourists. So with that, we're only running 10% of our tours. So normally this time of the year, with my small company, I run 3 tours every day, 7 days a week for the whole month of March. This week alone, I've run 2, and with 45% capacity. So yes, the borders are open, but it's money, it's ticking over. So we're grateful that the government have got rid of the lateral flow testing, and all the tourists that we're talking to are delighted that that's happened. But it's just after 2 years of struggling to survive, and now we're struggling to get staff. And yes, I know there's tons of Caymanians that are unemployed and they're looking for work, but there's not tons of Caymanians that basically are qualified boat captains or want to do the job. Or there's lots of Caymanians that, they want to do something else. They're tired of the tourism industry. So I just feel that, almost 30 years of getting this permit deferred because they want his job description, which was already in a very detailed cover letter. And basically it's just deferred, which is delaying my chance to get off island to go and sort out my mum. I'm her power of attorney, or enduring power of attorney, which is, gives me the right to deal with all her affairs when she's alive. So it's because we know a lot of stress and anguish, and I'm trying to get all this sorted by emailing and stuff like that to work. But it's other businesses that have been got their permits deferred as well, and we're all just scratching heads, kind of saying we can't single-handedly, the tourism industry cannot single-handedly solve Cayman's unemployed scenario. It's just technically impossible.
But let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question about that. So when people say that the tourism industry cannot single-handedly solve Cayman's unemployment issue, do you think that that's actually what the government is expecting? Because the government is only saying, we have all these people on stipend who were working in the tourism industry. We just need those people to get back to work. They're not saying fix unemployment outside of tourism or people who never worked in tourism before. They're just saying get those individuals back to work. So I've heard that comment a couple of times, that the tourism industry can't fix the unemployment issue. But do you actually think that that's what the government is trying to do?
I feel in one way, yes, but I feel there's another way. It's that it's hard to say this, but I'm going to say this. This is the elephant in the room. There are certain Caymanians that just don't want to work. And I've had Caymanians employed, and I've had them as boat captains, and I've had them basically, right, you've got a boat trip, you have to be here at this time, and this is what your duties are. And they do no shows. And all of a sudden, I'm left with a boat with tourists with no captain. So I'm struggling to fill in those voids. And that happens. With people on work permits, there seems to be more of a responsibility because they know that they have a little puppet over their strings, attached to them. And it's, it is the elephant in the room. I currently have 2 Caymanians employed, but no expats. And this expat is just filling in my position for 2 months as a boat captain. And there's no training involved. For me as a business, it is a like-for-like swap. But to be deferred, I mean, I even put it's a temporary position. It's not actually a full-time position, so there's no real job there. It's only my job. So it's mind-boggling how they come up with these decisions, and especially they want a job description, boat captain, please, seriously, and a tour narrator, explaining about tours, interacting with customers, explaining about the history, the culture, the biodiversity of the organisms that are in the water.
And what is this guy? May I just ask you a question about the guy you're trying to get a permit for? What is he doing on island if he doesn't have a permit, or is he working somewhere else? Or
no, he's from Colorado and he hates the cold.
But he's here in the Cayman Islands?
No, he's left. He basically comes down here for a couple of months, then goes off somewhere else, then comes back and whatever. So he's actually in Central America at the moment. Hopefully he's going to come back next week. Because I asked him to see if he can come back next week. But he's retired. He's retired in the US. He's not short of cash. He's not rolling in cash. And when he's down here, he likes to stay active. So he goes for his morning walks on 7 Mile Beach, and he basically just comes up because he's been coming here on and off since the 90s. He knows a lot of people here, so he just likes chatting.
So someone says there's actually a lot of boat captains in the Cayman Islands, but you're saying your experience has been one where it's difficult to find someone. Now, this case might be a little bit different because this is a bit of short notice and you're looking for someone to just fill in. So your argument is this is someone who's worked for you before, who knows your specific business, so he can fill in for the few months that you have to be away on your family emergency.
Correct. I could jump on a plane right now and I don't have to worry, don't have to stress, and the business will continue and start to accelerate, pick up. Because obviously all the businesses have been down on their knees for the last 2 years. Yes, there are loads of Caymanian boat captains, and they're all my friends. I know 99.5% of them, and they generally, all the really good boat captains have their own businesses, and they're all like me. They're struggling to get our businesses back up and running, back to where they were. Which is actually a very viable financial company, very profitable, until COVID came along. So as I said, it's not. Don't tar everybody with the same brush. But I've had Caymanians, right, employed with me before, and I've had to fire them for several reasons. And basically, even the guys that I fired, I'm still very, very good friends with. And I fired them for issues, it's basically that you just could not bring those issues to work, and that was happening. So I feel that it's I'm just one company, and I know of a couple of other companies that are getting permits deferred for silly reasons, and it's like, seriously, it's like we don't need this stress anymore. We've had enough stress for 2 years, and it's people go on about the stipend, we should go out and clean the beaches and stuff. People forget that the business owners and the workers, we're making very good money. Like the guys that work for me make almost 1,000 CI a week, but we're running 3 trips a day because they're making exceptionally good tips. And when you take 4,000, 5,000 out of the equation, you give them 1,500. They have bills that they basically have, their car payments, their light, their water, their mortgage, their rent. And the 1,500 is very generous, but it just didn't cover it. So most of the guys have been out basically doing other stuff like I was doing. I started a construction company, and I'm doing house repairs and everything else just to pay bills. And now we're trying to get our businesses back up and running. We're throwing these little obstacles in our way, and it's stressful. And we don't need this stress. We just need to get our businesses going. And government, I can understand they want to get every Kamanian back to work, and I'm 100% behind that. But not every Kamanian is suitable to be in all the positions. And I was taken aback when I got that deferral yesterday, and it was just like ridiculous. Especially as everything that they asked for was in the covering letter or on the application form.
All right, Paul. Well, I guess the one issue is whoever is looking at the applications needs to look at it a little bit more closely. But of course, I got to tell you that most people who are listening to the program are of the opinion that they're glad that immigration is starting to defer some work permits to really put pressure on people to do the right thing. So you might be caught in the crosshairs of this. Maybe that's what's happening here. Yes, exactly. But you know, so
exactly what you said, Sandy, at the start. Just there, the last sentence, you just said maybe the person should have read the application and read the covering letter, and it was pretty detailed. I don't want to go in about family business. I don't want to go in about business thing that I have to do and stuff like that. But it's a 2-month position because I'm going to be gone for probably 2 months. And it's not a new job. It's just filling in for me. And it's again, it's government putting a restraint on businesses that are struggling and trying to survive. So that's all I can say.
Okay. All right, Paul. Well, thank you so much for the call. I know you called me last night quite upset. And like I said, sometimes there are things that you got to express yourself. So we do have some people who said they've got a Caymanian boat captain for you if you're interested. They can send you his contact details.
I am hiring as soon as we can get more trips under our belt. So when we get the full airlift capacity, it means I get more business, and I will need full permanent staff. So basically, they will see the ad on the work portal, but at the moment I don't have the job. I don't have enough business to actually hire somebody full time. And the only reason I put a temporary permit in for this guy is I can leave tomorrow, and I need to leave pretty straight away. And I don't have time to train people, and that's just probably my own bad luck. But as I said, I only want to hire Kamanians because I don't have to pay $3,000 in a permit fee. So it's one of these catch-22 conundrums with this temporary permit, and I was just gobsmacked that it was deferred. So
All
okay,
right.
I'll leave it there.
Very good. So all right. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Have a good day.
All right, you too. Bye-bye. All right, folks. So remember last week I was telling you guys that there was another Caymanian who has I think he has a gardening business, and he said that he was having a similar issue where his small business work permits were getting turned down because immigration's actually finally turning down work permits, or they're deferring them, asking for additional information. Now, in the case of Paul has said, he has the job description and the salary information either in the cover letter or in the application itself, and that maybe someone just isn't looking at it properly. So he feels like now his application is being unduly deferred. And he did mention that he has several Caymanians hired as well, but this is a situation where this guy has worked for him before. He's not going to just be a boat captain, but I guess he's actually going to be running the business in a way while he's away for a month or two. So Nellie sounds like she says that's a friend. He don't need anyone, just helping out a friend, sounds like to me. Well, it sounds like the friend is going to be helping him by doing his job while he's away, which, in fairness to Paul, when you are a small business owner, if something happens to you, like if I'm sick for a week, what happens to CMR? Who's going to do the show? These are legitimate questions that you have to think about. Like, what's your contingency plan as a small business owner? And sometimes it's almost like you're the only person who can do it. It is a little bit crazy. But a couple of days ago, I was saying to Minister Brian that, I'm planning on hopefully taking a vacation between now and the end of the month. so that I can just get like a little break and do some stuff overseas that I have to do. And he says, a vacation? What's that? What CMR taking a vacation? How is that possible? And he also said, who's going to do the morning show? Like, we're going to have withdrawal symptoms if you're not here. So I kind of chuckled at that. And I said, well, theoretically, I can remotely do the morning show no matter where I am. So thanks to modern technology, that's entirely possible. And I don't want you guys to get upset and not have any morning show available. So I think I probably will do that. So Christopher, thank you so much for joining. Christopher says it sounds like a personal problem to me. It is about time immigration stepped up and blocked work permits so that Caymanians can be gainfully employed. He can easily get a Caymanian boat captain with no issue. If this was the USA, he'd have to provide more than a job description. Jared is itching to come back in on the discussion. Good morning, Jared.
Yes, Miss Sandy, you know I had to jump back in. You know I had to jump back in. I would say this. What type of rubber knees two mouth thing did I just hear a while ago? Immigration, thank you for doing your job. Thank you for standing up for Caymanians. Thank you for letting people know this is the Cayman Islands, and the Cayman Islands is run by the immigration department known as Works. Now, I understand as a business owner, you're going through a little pressure and, you're feeling, is he really going to question my fellow Caymanian that they cannot read? Now that I won't take it personally.
Well,
but I feel a way.
Yes.
Because, okay, first of all, the person is retired. One, okay, if that person get a heart attack or whatever, they go into HSA. We don't need that. Sorry. The person doesn't like the cold in Colorado. There are warmer states from North Carolina going all the way down to Florida. I'm sure the heat is fine in the southern states. The question about, he can't find a Caymanian, that is not my problem. You're not looking good enough. Sorry. Immigration.
Well, let's be fair. Let's be fair to Paul here for just a minute, right?
But I'm
gonna play victim's advocate, which you like to do on occasion. So hear me out now. As a business owner, couple things Paul has. This is an unplanned situation. So his mom or whoever, somebody's sick. He wants someone to essentially run his business for him, right? So he's looking for someone he can trust. Now, there are tons of Caymanians out there, for sure qualified as boat captains who can come in, and he would have to teach them how he does things wherever. But maybe, as he said, he needs to get on a plane tomorrow if he can. He doesn't have the luxury of time on his hands to be able to do those things. So that's why he only wants a temporary contract. Get this guy in here, sort out whatever is happening with his situation overseas. Hopefully nobody, there's nobody that dies or anything like that, but he can get back on island and then continue recruiting in his normal way. Is that not the type of situation that the temporary work permit system was designed to accommodate?
That may have been the intention, Miss Sandy, but if you go to America and Canada and the UK and you put in that visa, whatever thing, it's not going to work like that. Now, it may be that the Cayman Islands has a temporary work permit, okay. But if we are looking at the global standard, and I'm being very dogmatic with my tone of voice, because I did not appreciate that lambasting of Caymanians where Caymanians don't. That's not true. When we had the job fair a week and a half ago and Caymanians were showing up, what is that saying? Caymanians want to work. Don't tell me about Caymanians don't want to work. You looking in the wrong basket. Open up your eyes and look in the good basket and you might find something. But I do not like it when people come and lambast Caymanians and using the few bad apples to represent the whole, and it's generalization. That's a generalization. And I don't, if work was really work, they probably say, sorry, Bobo, all right. Because the role of the government, and as the minister Brian has said, Cayman first. All the other countries are putting their people first. So
now, did you hear the show on Monday, or was that Tuesday? I can't remember. The days are melting together. I think that was Monday's discussion, where I said that Caymanians also now need to start really doing their part and pulling up their bootstraps.
Yes.
Because these bad apples. I spoke to a young man at the job fair, and I said to him, he said, "Oh, Miss Sandy, what's up?" And I said, "Hey, you're looking for a job?" He said, "Yeah, he's happy to do like outside beach work and whatever." Young Caymanian, high school education, that's it. And I said to him, I said, where were you working before? Oh, I got fired from my job and I was like, fired? And I said to him, I said, young man, maybe you're too young to know this, but there was a time when a Caymanian could leave their place of employment in the morning, like right now, 9:35 a.m. And by 2 p.m. this afternoon, you'd have another job. Those days are long gone. That's not how it's working anymore. It is becoming much more difficult for Caymanians, or anybody really, but definitely Caymanians, to find employment. And once you have a track record that is preceding you being fired of not, fighting on the job or smoking on the job, whatever it is that you're supposed to not be doing that got you fired, not only are you going to find it more and more difficult to find employment opportunities for yourself, but more importantly, you are also going to really make it harder on everybody else, because you do start to judge people, the entire Cayman Islands population, Caymanians in particular, by those bad apples. Someone as myself who has, retail business, one of the reasons why I said I'm not going to hire anybody else in my retail business is because I've had one or two bad Caymanians. And I'm like, I can't be bothered.
But
I'm not going to fight immigration for work permit. So I will manage my business to the point where I can manage it. And when I can't manage it anymore, I just stop taking customers. I have that choice because the type of retail that I'm in is not like traditional retail.
Yeah.
So I can take on a certain amount of customers, put a pause on it. So not taking anybody else for right now.
Yeah.
And, I have that level of flexibility. I don't have at the moment a traditional retail store that someone needs to be sitting at all day. But I can tell you the challenges of finding someone who can come in and work in that environment, who shows up to work, who shows up on time, and just does the bare minimum is really, really difficult. Now, I don't know, retail isn't going to be highfalutin, high-paying job. So maybe when you're in certain markets, you have that same sort of issue. I was just speaking to another business owner yesterday, and she was talking about the struggles of, and she gives Caymanians a chance. She gives Caymanians with police records a chance and an opportunity, and they still come in there and negatively impact her business.
Okay, so let's talk about the real elephant in the room. Let's talk about those business owners who take out work permits and treat the people like, I don't even know if dirt was the word, it'd be beneath dirt. We have people, business owners, who take out work permits for people who come here, and they treat them, God honestly, badly. Let's talk about that. Because if we're gonna talk about Caymanians not performing, let's talk about the employees who abuse people who come here. And there are numerous cases that are it's known, people will know, and people won't see it. So let's talk about that. Yeah, we have Caymanians that are not performing. The gap that I see with that is that work needs to create a program where it talks about skills that you need to do. If you're having difficulty with your employer, talk to your employer. Don't get up and quit. Look at a resolution. Look at figuring it out. Truth be told, not every employer is going to want to do that. As a business owner myself, it takes a lot of time and resources to do that. But, it is the mandate of the Immigration Act, or WROC Act 2021, to hire Caymanians first. And I'm sorry if that sounds bad to a business owner. Maybe Cayman is not the place to do business. But we have a lot to fix in Cayman in terms of, something, Miss Sandy, Caymanians have a hard time when they come into their own country and they see and feel like a minority in their own country. We have to sit down at the table and say, listen, you have got to stop taking this personal. We are from the stock of sea captains who worked their way up from the bottom to the top. So we need to really look at how we are representing each other. If one Caymanian falls, we all fall. If one Caymanian gets fired, we all get fired. We have to look at the holistic standpoint. And I do get the business owner's sentiments where it's an emergency situation and stuff like that. But you have to look at the precedent. If this is something that everybody say, okay, I gotta get up and go. If all 30,000 employers did that in Cayman, you could see the problem that work would be in. I'm not saying this isn't an extenuating circumstance. It is. But as much as you put down a Caymanian, you have to give feedback so that they understand what is going on. And yes, you might have some who just don't care. And truth be told, that is quite sad because it does affect all Caymanians, whether we like to believe it or not. I believe that the narrative is beginning to change. I would ask employers to be a bit more considerate when making certain sentiments, because Caymanians could say, y'all go and leave. Caymanians could get up and say that. Caymanians could rightly say that, because when you're in America or Canada or the UK, they do not take that same attitude. Those immigration departments require piles and piles of paperwork. So when our immigration department called WRC, which is headed up by a Caymanian, says deferred, it is deferred on the basis and merit that you need to go look back in the pile, find somebody else, as we like to say, reel and come again, because we're not taking that story, and I'm not taking that story, and I'm not gonna let somebody who you might have come here 30, 40, 50 years ago and you disrespect a Caymanian. Not that you don't have the grounds to, but you don't come in people's country and be disrespectful and expect things to go over nicely. And Caymanians won't say that. Caymanians will make you say what you gotta say. And they say, okay, all right, we're not going to support your business. You see what I'm saying? But employers need to understand where Caymanians are coming from. How would you feel if you see your country going in a direction where you don't see yourself? That is the important question. How are you uplifting the Caymanian to say, listen, don't be the victim. Lift up your head and let's get this moving. So to all those Caymanians, let's go stay in the job at least a year, 6 months minimum. But keep your heads up, because I know a lot of young Caymanian children who are just feeling quite defeated. And if they were on this show this morning and they heard what that guy said, they would not feel like wanting to work for anyone. That is what I'm seeing his sentiments echoed, because we have a young Caymanian generation coming up, and we have got to get it right so that when they come off the runway like that airplane, they're going to soar. So that is why I'm coming on here, and in not disagreeing, but understanding the owner's sentiments, that what you just did was pretty much paralyzed. It could have paralyzed the generation right there.
All right. Thank you, Jared. I appreciate those comments this morning. All right, folks. You can give us a call. We are into overtime, so I do need to end the show, but just a reminder, generally speaking, you can call. Call now at 936-2626 to join the conversation here in the Cold Hard Truth. Irvin said trust is the key word. Miranda says Paul should have trained someone 6 months ago to allow him to go and see his mom. He just to give his friend a trip. Paul is rude, insulting, and calling us lazy. Well, he didn't call me lazy. He ain't talking about me. But some of y'all, Marshall says that temporary work permit will turn into 1 year work permit. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't the previous administration, in fact, give the devil his due? Didn't they make a change where now whenever you apply for a temporary work permit, you can't get all these extensions? I believe, and maybe we've got an immigration expert listening to the show, that amendment to the regulations or whoever it would have been done has been passed. So this concept of, continually, because people would do this, as Marshall said, it was a way of abusing the system. This concept of putting in work permits temporary and getting all these extensions can no longer be done. So you get one temporary, as I recall, is how it's supposed to work. And then that's it. El Rey says, but it sounds like Paul wants a boat captain plus a business manager to run the whole show while he's gone. And maybe that's why he didn't provide a job description. Well, he says he's provided a job description, but I do wonder if he's just saying just a boat captain. And as you say, really what he's looking for is someone to run the business in his absence, not just run the boat. There is an obvious distinction. The ugly truth makes the following point. Some of these unemployed Caymanians are simply unemployable, and those same unemployable people scream the loudest about not getting a chance. I cannot argue with that either. That is also the cold, hard truth and the ugly truth at the same time. Rhonda makes the point. Good morning to you, my dear. She says, I don't understand your last caller, Paul. He said he's a small business owner. He's not that busy, but he doesn't have the time to train. Excuse me, but he's not that busy. I thank immigration for doing their job. It is time for us Caymanians to put our foot down and remember, we don't go in another country and tell them what to do. I think the point that Paul was trying to make is that they have made the changes, the what do we call them now? Regulatory changes, like removing all the testing requirements, and all of a sudden all the planes are coming back. And he feels like they didn't have a whole lot of notice as it relates to that, which I don't know how much notice you needed. I mean, they kept saying the industry has to reopen. We can't continue hemorrhaging millions of dollars a month to keep people on a stipend. So I do kind of wonder why people were kind of wondering when it would happen. Maybe some of the false starts in tourism, where we had to pull back because of another COVID outbreak, had small business owners like Paul a little bit unsure of when we would actually start to open and they would start to get bookings, that sort of thing. Because I heard people, trust me, screaming every single time the government would take another measure, like, okay, let's wait, phase 4 is going to be extended, whatever. People are like, oh, I'm getting cancellations and bookings. Government just needs to fling the borders open. So there was this push to let's just move forward regardless of what COVID was doing, and just get it done. And people felt the PAC government was being too cautious. So maybe there is this kind of, for people in the industry, they weren't sure where they're going to be. And as he rightfully said, it's not going to be back to where it was, those levels overnight. It's going to take time to pick up. So maybe that's just a little bit of the uncertainty of being in the tourism industry at the moment, especially when you're the one running the business. Just like I'm hearing places like the Ritz and Kimpton are already almost at capacity. And they didn't anticipate that. So they're a mad rush to try to get people hired. So folks, maybe if you're in tourism or hospitality, this is your chance to get back to work. So do what you got to do. Emma says, let's talk about the discrimination of mature residents and the discrimination of women in certain jobs. International Women's Day. Equality. Equity. People over 50 find it very difficult to find work, even when they are healthy and loyal, hardworking individuals. Perla says, Cayman needs fixing. It's true, Jared. And she also says, Jared, you are saying the magic words. Daphne, good morning. She says, that's true, Sandra. And you have a small business, you lose a lot while trying to find the right person. And not everyone has the flexibility. Like I said, with my little small business, I'm like, I just can't even. The headache of trying to micromanage someone who isn't going to really do a good job is going to make me look bad. And then I still have to pay them. You know how that makes a small business owner feel? Like you work hard to get a few coins to be able to put in the bank and pay your bills. And if one of your bills is having to pay people and then they're always screwing up, trust me, there's nothing worse than that in the world. And that's why I think it's so much easier to not be a business owner. It's easier to work for somebody else because then you don't have to worry about those things. And the reality is, if you've never owned a business, let me be very fair to Paul. If you've never owned a business and you've never owned a business in the Cayman Islands, it is very, very easy to take a certain position and stick with it because you've not been in that space. You don't know the struggles. of hiring and taking people on, and you got to fire them, you got to get rid of them. And, you don't know the struggles until you've actually done it. So when you're on the outside looking in and you've only been an employee, it is infinitely easier for you to argue in black and white. And I think this issue, I argue for Caymanians first, but I also understand that there is a bit of a quandary here for employers who do their best to hire Caymanians first, and they still get the short end of the stick. And we also need to address that. We can't address just one side of this equation. So we've got to ensure that, people are living up to what they're actually applying and what they're actually doing. So Perla says, yes, but it works both ways. Employers abuse their workers by cutting salaries or bonuses, and that's not fair. Well, in times like this, y'all see what's happening with inflation now? An all-time high in like 40 years. Prices increased 7.9% in the year through February, the fastest pace of inflation in 40 years. Most of y'all not even 40 years old. And it's not just gas prices, it's everything. Food and other commodities. This is impacting the entire world, folks. It's not just Cayman that is seeing the increase in food prices and everything else. As a matter of fact, just the other day, I had a girlfriend who went to Miami, and she was in Miami. I was like, oh, I didn't know you were in Miami. She's like, girl, it's expensive up here. Shopping, food, everything's expensive. I was like, y'all run into Walmart and didn't know that Walmart increased their prices too. Carol says there was no 6 months ago, and just maybe his mother has just fallen ill. Yeah, I don't think, again, I want to be very, very cautious about us kind of judging Paul, because I don't think this is a situation where he had any notice that mom was going to be ill. Like literally, she just fell ill. So if he wants to get off island as quickly as possible to see his mom before things get worse, that is not something he was anticipating. And he's just thinking, who can I get in here to, business is starting to pick back up. Who can I get in here that I trust and that isn't going to see my business blow up in flames while I'm gone for a couple months? And if you don't think that that's a real concern for a small business owner when you're sick or you have to be away, who's going to do it? Of course it is. It really, really is. Take it from me. I mean, I have to get up every day, and there's certain things I gotta be like, okay, I gotta make sure this is in place today, and and this gets done, and we're scheduling stuff for like next week. And if I'm out and I'm not able to respond to emails, and I can't respond to messages, and I can't listen, who else is gonna do it? Someone who's had experience doing it before is certainly, to Paul's argument, what he's looking for. So Jamila says you can only get one extension. Yes, I know that they had cut it back. You can only do one temporary, basically. So Nat B says, Paul, like many employers in the industry, doesn't think government would push back about the hiring of Caymanians, as work permits were rubber stamped with zero oversight. Marshall says, Paul claims it's not that busy. Well, close for a week or two and then go back. Well, he's going to be gone for a couple months. So he never said. And here's the thing. You can't close a business. Marshall, come on now. You can't close a business for a couple months and expect that when you come back, clients are going to be there. You are just starting to get back. So Paul said he was hustling. He was doing construction. He did whatever he could to survive COVID. Now he's trying to build his customer base again. He's getting some bookings. So closing your business, you think is a good idea? Are you guys for real? No way. I would never recommend closing a business, especially a business like that. That's suicide. Closing your business, you might as well be prepared to probably not open up that business again. And Paul, to the best of my knowledge, has invested a lot of hard-earned money in his boats and equipment and other stuff. And you're just going to dry dock those things? I don't know. I'm really not feeling that that's the right advice either. How do you just close a business? Oh, I'm going to be out for a couple months. Anyway, So Christopher said, Paul mentioned that the individual comes to Cayman annually. Well, he said that the guy travels around. I don't know when was the last time he worked for him, but it does sound like he said the guy travels to different locations throughout the year. So, I think that, I don't know if he hires him every single time he's here, but it does sound like he comes and goes, and he's definitely worked for him before. And I don't know if that's an ongoing situation or not. Emma says a lot of times interviewers are only focused on the business part and never ask questions to actually feel or learn who the individual is. Not everyone is cut out to do interviews. You mean the interviewee is not doing a good job? All right, folks. Life in the Cayman Islands. Yep, it is what it is. Thank you guys so much for tuning into the show this morning. Like I said, I didn't really delve too into how often this guy is hired by Paul. I guess we could always try to get more of those details, but trust that you guys have a fantastic day. Tomorrow is Friday. So tomorrow's discussion, first of all, it's dress down. It's the cultural dress down day. So I still don't have an outfit yet. I think I need to call Miss Donna or somebody and at least get a little hat or straw hat or something to wear, right? So I need to work on some logistics because I believe we're supposed to be talking to the team regarding the government officials. So in the government building, they're doing dress down. We have an entire list of participants who have been confirmed. So let me do a quick shout out to these individuals. We have Tiny Tots Academy. They did their dress down event yesterday. Cayman International School, so CIS. West Bay Primary School, West End, my apologies. West End Primary School in Cayman Brac, Montessori by the Sea, National Gallery, Footsteps, Cayman Learning Center, Lighthouse School, Calvary Baptist Christian Academy, Georgetown Primary, Creek and Spot Bay Primary in Cayman Brac, and John Gray High School. Not for nothing, but where are the rest of the schools? Who else is doing dress for Culture Day? I would have expected every school, not just CIS, Tiny Tots, 2 schools in the BRAC, which is impressive. Good for the BRAC. Lighthouse School, good for them. Georgetown Primary and John Gray. Where's West Bay? Where's Prospect Primary? Where is East End Primary? They have a lot of culture. They should be all dressed up in East End. Who else? What are the other primary schools? We got Prospect, Red Bay, East End, West Bay, some of the private schools, so Catholic, Prep, all the other Montessori schools, because they only have Montessori by the Sea listed. Why aren't they all participating in this wonderful CNCF Dress for Culture Day? Hopefully they are, and they just forgot to email someone. So the Cayman Islands government is also a big participant. So tomorrow morning at the government admin building, we're going to have them join us at 9 o'clock as they discuss, their participation. Okay. So, I need to get my little outfit sorted out myself. Yeah. Okay. Let me see here. So that's tomorrow. Oh, and before then, we're going to be discussing this hot mess of a situation with the Cayman Islands Music and Entertainment Association. Y'all want to talk about the Caymanians who can't get it together? I hate to say this, but the CMEA they've been a hot mess of association for a minute. So we're going to talk about them tomorrow because it's popping off again. This every year, every election, it's a problem. And I need to now understand as Caymanians why a 99% Caymanian organization can't get it together. You all are making us look bad. I'm feeling like the Music Association needs to be dismantled. Let them go sit in a corner for 2 years, time out, no government funding, nothing, And when you can be professionals and get your ish together, then you can reform as an organization. Because it really is bad what's going on over there. Everything, it's a fight, and this one wasn't elected properly, and then people claiming that people are lying about proxies, and I just can't even. But we're going to talk about it tomorrow because it is topical. I don't know. What a mess. So Prospect is doing it. Okay, they're not in the list. Perla says, I wish some businesses like the supermarket would do it. Why not? Shall we message Woody? Irvlyn did make mention of the fact that for the alert, it didn't notify her because she didn't have data on her phone. And so she was not on Wi-Fi. Somebody's calling me here. So if you're not on Wi-Fi, folks, that's why you sign up for text. Tick all three options, text and everything else. And so that you're able to get the messages. All right, folks, have a fantastic day. I will see you guys tomorrow.
Thank you for tuning in to another edition of The Cold Hard Truth. Make sure to check Facebook for showtimes and more information and the latest news at CaymanMarlRoad.com. Subscribe to our IG and Facebook pages to get the latest happenings.